Welcome back to Athens Happens. I'm Ayden McDougle, digital content producer for The New Political.
And I'm Taylor Schneider, digital content creator for The New Political.
Athens Happens is a podcast brought to you by The New Political, a student publication dedicated to explaining the nuances of Ohio University, Athens, and state politics.
You can find new episodes at thenewpolitical.com or wherever else podcasts can be downloaded.
As of today, we are 48 days away from Election Day and 13 days away from the first vice presidential debate between Minnesota Governor Tim Walz and Ohio Senator J.D. Vance. As we near Election Day, political tensions continue to rise and more controversies pop up every week.
Our very own Ava Jelepis recently covered the Waltz for Trump photo that went viral on September 4th when Charles Herbster, chairman of Rural Americans for Trump, posted the photo on Twitter, or X. Ava, can you tell us a little bit about yourself and also about the article about Tim Waltz you wrote this week?
Yes, so hi, I'm Ava. I'm a freshman. I'm double majoring in journalism and political science. I'm involved with the New Political, WOUB, and my article is basically just about debunking the claims that Herbster, along with other opposers of Walz, made about the photo and just really showing how people can blow things out of proportion.
Well, it's great to have you, and so I kind of just want to jump right into the article you wrote, but then also Tim Walz as a candidate and maybe potentially J.D. Vance on the other side as that candidate. Because, I mean, within your article, you explain how and why the image was posted and then the response from the rest of Walz's family members and that reaction, but what is your reaction to the picture itself? What did you think when you first saw it?
Well, my first reaction was that's the wrong type of grammar because the shirts say Walz is for Trump. That was my initial reaction, but I wasn't really surprised that it was like that. But I just knew that something was up, especially after seeing all of, Tim Walz's sisters came out and saying, I don't even recognize the people in the photo. And many opposers of Walz, they were blowing it up, making such a big deal out of it, making so much fun of it. And the whole Walz family seemed pretty unbothered by it because they knew it just wasn't a big deal. And of course they addressed it right away, but it didn't really seem like a big thing for the other side, but opposers definitely tried to blow it out of proportion, which I thought was really interesting, especially considering they knew that it was just going to be shut down right away.
When I first saw it, I immediately realized that it was just a photo that was circulating to draw our attention away from real issues that were going on.
Yeah, when I first saw it, I saw it again also on Twitter first because that's where it was posted originally, but not through Trump's endorsement of the picture or accepting the endorsement through the picture. It was through some political commentator that exists all over Twitter. But I agree with you to where, my family is, different and, certain political views and this, that, and it's what kind of you wrote towards the beginning of your article and what you finished your article with, Ava, to where you were talking about how, kind of how, it's inevitable and how certain family dynamics are not all the same when it comes to political views, and I really agreed with that.
Okay, Ava, you mentioned that you were writing the article to kind of debunk what the picture was trying to show the audience members that were looking at it. Will you talk about what that debunking looked like? Who are the actual people that are in those pictures if they aren't the immediate family members?
But yeah, so the first time I saw the photo was when the political commentator Benny Johnson had posted it, and he posted it with the words, "The entire family of Kamala Harris's running mate, Tim Walz, just endorsed Trump. This is the greatest troll of the 2024 election." I'd never heard of Benny Johnson before this. Maybe people have, but I just had never heard of it. But right away, I looked at the photo and I was like, well, first of all, that's not the entire family of Kamala Harris's running mate, as that doesn't include his mom or his sister or people that I've seen him with. So I looked more into it, and quickly, a lot of different news sources talked to the Walz family because Walz's sister quickly shut it down, and she said we weren't close with them and we didn't know them, and most of the people in that photo are all distant cousins or spouses and family that they don't even recognize. That's both Tim Walz's sister and his mother said that they don't even recognize the people in the photo. So it's just another example of how exaggerated and misleading people can be when they're trying to make a spectacle out of something that's not really even important.
Right, for sure. And I think correct me if I'm wrong, the only person that is a confirmed immediate family member that doesn't stand with him is a brother that he hasn't talked to in a while.
Yes, his older brother, Jeff Walz, he's estranged from the family. He is not in support with his brother, and he said in the best quote that he's 100% opposed to all of his ideology, but he has taken to social media in the past, but as of recent, he's kind of stayed off of all the social aspects of it, and he actually regrets coming out and saying all those things, and I'm sure that he still feels that way, but I don't think a lot of people in his family were really paying attention to his opinions as he is estranged, so he's the only person who's really close in the close-knit family who does not support Tim Walz, as I'm aware of.
Wasn't the only big key point that Jeff Walz pointed out when he first was kind of picked up more on social media of him saying, "Oh, the stories I would tell," and then getting questioned on the stories, and his one story was that Tim Walz had motion sickness when he was a kid. That was it.
That was it. He also hasn't spoken to his brother for 8 years, so maybe they have some catching up to do, maybe they have some personal things going on, but I just don't really believe it's a big deal because it's family, and with family comes personal issues, so it might just be him. For all we know, something could have just happened personal between them, so he's like, okay, I'm not going to support you. It might not have to do with his beliefs at all, but no, he's never said anything really legitimately for not supporting his brother besides the having motion sickness, which might be a big deal to him, but I don't think for a lot of people that's a voter.
Right.
It's really a choice they would make.
God forbid somebody has motion sickness.
Yeah. I have motion sickness, so I'm a little offended.
It's like saying nothing, saying nothing detrimental or anything doesn't affect any voter's mind or change any independent in the middle or any swing voter who could possibly go this way or that, unless someone's really against motion sickness out there that goes,
I honestly wouldn't be
can't.
surprised if someone brought up, well, Tim Walz has motion sickness. He can't be the vice president.
So, who is Tim Walz? He is Minnesota's 41st governor. He was first elected in 2018, won re-election in 2022. I mean, his accomplishments as governor range from providing universal free school meals for students, protecting reproductive rights, strengthening voting rights, laying the groundwork to get Minnesota to 100% clean electricity by 2040, cutting taxes for the middle class, and expanding paid leave for Minnesota workers.
So he's just a Midwestern dad.
Yeah, just a Midwestern dad. I mean, yeah, he served 24 years in the Army National Guard, command sergeant. He retired in 2005, and then was teacher, coach, and then got into politics.
Yeah. His wife and him worked at a high school together, and that's how they met. He was actually the faculty advisor for that school's first Gay Straight Alliance chapter, which is really wholesome as well.
Well, on the other hand, for the Republican Party, we have J.D. Vance. James David Vance was born and raised in Middletown, Ohio, outside of Appalachia.
So he graduated from OSU with a major in political science. Then in 2013, he graduated from Yale Law School. 2 years later, he joined Mithril Capital, which was a capital fund started by Peter Thiel. And then a year later moved back to Ohio and started a nonprofit for disadvantaged children. And then on to November 2022 is when he was elected into the U.S. Senate, which was not too long ago. But the interesting thing about that is that it was with the help of $10 million from Peter Thiel, that person that was the owner of Mithril Capital. But what's even more interesting is that in 2019, that venture capital fund was investigated by the FBI for financial misconduct.
Like Peter Thiel, the same CEO of PayPal, Peter Thiel?
Yeah, interesting. So yeah, his capital fund was the Mithril Capital, the one that J.D. Vance had joined in 2015, was investigated by the FBI for financial misconduct.
Interesting, in 2016, the year after, he tweets were revealed that he tweeted that he would not vote for President Trump.
Yeah. Never Trump.
Never Trump. Never Trump.
He related Trump to Hitler, I believe.
J.D. Vance also said about Trump that, quote, Trump makes people I care about afraid, immigrants, Muslims, etc. Because of this, I find him reprehensible. God wants better of us.
Which that is like a highly contentious thing that people are bringing up, is that he was a, in quote, never Trump person. And there was this curve that he went on, but it's hard because how can you say a quote like Ava just recited and not still feel that way? He said that in what year was it?
That was in 2016. That was in October of 2016.
Right, 2016. Trump's policies look exactly the same as they did in 2016. So it's just hard to believe somebody who's going from that to, being his running mate, which is, I think, what a lot of the American public is going to struggle with when placing that vote, is how much faith can you have in someone that you don't know is going to be loyal?
Someone that doesn't have guaranteed loyalty to somebody who desires that guaranteed loyalty, but somebody who's also on this current campaign trail and has made up so many other stories and has tried to be the person that he thinks Trump wants him to be and the person that he thinks the voters want him to be. And it honestly is electrifying the Republican base, which he's doing a good job for that on his part, but also more recently making up the story of what's happening in Springfield, Ohio, like we mentioned last week, and still the ongoing stuff that is still occurring based on his baseless claims. And I know, Ava, you could probably talk a little bit more about that.
Yes, my next story that I just finished writing today it was their words that did it, which is a quote from the mayor of Springfield. This has to do with the words that both Donald Trump and J.D. Vance have said about the false, baseless claims about the immigrants eating cats and eating dogs in Springfield, Ohio. And I go more into this in the article, but I've seen just so many memes online, and yes, they're very funny because it's just ridiculous. It's a ridiculous thing to say, but in reality, it's been not a pretty picture, and it's not been as funny for the people who live in Springfield who have had to deal with the rear of this, and the immigrants who've had to deal with sending their children off to school and people asking their kids, what does dog taste like and what does cat like? What does cat taste like? But J.D. Vance is actually one of the people who he backs Trump up in his claims. But at the same time, he admits that what Trump has said isn't true. But he said, quote, "If I have to create stories so the American media actually pays attention to the suffering of the American people, that's what I'm going to do."
Oh my God.
So he just basically admits that it's okay to make up stories just to get people
Oh my
to support
God,
what he
that's
believes.
so bad. That's so bad, especially in the day and age where technology is at a point where we're struggling to even use it efficiently because of the amount of fake news that's being circulated or misleading news that's being circulated. So to have somebody who is literally a candidate for the Vice President of the United States outwardly say that he will make things up if it means grabbing Americans' attention is beyond me. I cannot even fathom.
Yeah, and then he tried to double back on that and give a report to the Wall Street Journal, or a police report to the Wall Street Journal, in which a local resident claimed her pet might have been taken by a Haitian neighbor. But a reporter visited this resident's house and confirmed that her missing cat, Miss Sassy, who disappeared in late August, was actually found safe a few days later, hiding in her very own basement. So that's what that report came from to Vance that he gave to the Wall Street Journal. And then later, he got called out for it by, I think, the New York Times at one of the most recent rallies. And then Vance's response was just how the media takes his words and essentially reports it, and that's a problem. He didn't say that directly, but he was like, the media, you guys take my words and just use them the way that you want. But they just quoted him directly.
Right.
And
what was there to be confused?
Nothing.
Right. That was a pretty straightforward statement that you said. It can't be misunderstood.
Yeah.
Yeah, what I think is very ironic about it as well is that he says he wants the media to actually pay attention to the suffering of the American people, but what about the Haitian Americans who live in Springfield? He's not paying attention to their suffering. And again, their kids have to go to school. Well, actually, most of their kids haven't been in school because schools actually have been evacuated, locked down because of there's been over 33 bomb threats to public buildings, schools, officials' houses in Springfield, and it's been terrible. And obviously, he says he wants the media to pay attention to the suffering of the American people, but he can't even do that himself. He's becoming a larger factor in that suffering. His words, him and Donald Trump's words, both are what's basically caused this whole thing to spiral and get out of control because you're watching the debate along with millions of other Americans, and a lot of people take what Trump says very seriously to heart. A lot of people do, and they're gonna be like, yeah, the Haitians are eating the dogs and they're eating the cats, which, as ridiculous as I personally believe it sounds, a bunch of people probably think there's truth to that.
Yeah, for sure. And are people wrong for thinking that there's truth to that? Like, when somebody in power is given a voice and given a platform and a microphone to speak out in a whole presidential debate, you know, that millions of people are watching, we kind of assume that when somebody says something out loud that it's true.
I mean, we have for a long time, still do, even on like the party side, but just as a collective group of many Americans do have that blind trust in politicians, and that's what has been challenged throughout the years, but gets challenged to like certain extremes to where some people have so much distrust in like the government and media to where the moon landing was fake. But then when you have a presidential candidate who was president for 4 whole years gives a statement, and people that support him are going to believe what he says, and maybe some people on the other side of the aisle believed it too, which is why reporters had to go to Springfield, Ohio, had to go down to Springfield, Ohio and report on that story and figure out what that really meant, what that was. Even though it's not something I agree with, I don't think it's something that should have been heavily reported on because it's just not true at all. But it is something that I guess needed to be debunked.
Yeah. I mean, it's unfortunate that we even have to be like creating the time and space for this conversation, but I do think we have to, because if there's going to be all the misleading information going out, I think it's our job as educated people and educated voters to come out and use our voice to debunk those things. But it's unfortunate that we have to do it to begin with.
Yeah, the mayor of Springfield, Mayor Rue, he said a lot of things about all of the politicians. He hasn't said anyone by name yet, but he's just said, one of his quotes was, all these federal politicians that have negatively spun our city, they need to know they're hurting our city, and it was their words that did it, which is where the title of my article came from. But he talks a lot about how these politicians, they have a responsibility to choose their words more wisely, because obviously so much has become of this. It's been a week now, and they're still receiving bomb threats, and it was the federal politicians who have the stage and they have the audience and they can say whatever they want, and they have to realize that because they have such a big audience, that comes with a responsibility.
Yeah, absolutely. So it's similar to what happened, or the idea of that politicians need to be more careful of the words that they're using. It's similar to what happened on January 6th. You know, as much as former President Trump wants to say that it was never his intention to incite violence. Okay, maybe that wasn't your intention, but did you think twice about the words that you were saying and how the amount of people listening to them would react to those words? And then in this case scenario, it's more about what Trump didn't say, that he didn't, look into the fact that what was happening wasn't true, and it had to be a moderator to step in and say that it wasn't true.
And the claims that Trump made during the debate were so baseless. There was nothing to hold them up. All we had to say was, oh, I saw it on TV. I saw it on TV. Even he doesn't know. I feel like even he doesn't know what exactly he's talking about. But it sure caused a lot of havoc for the community and the Haitian Americans who have lived there for years. I was reading on a Haitian American who he's lived there for 5 years, and he's afraid to go outside or take a walk around his neighborhood. And one of his quotes was just, they hate us, because he's terrified, and many other Haitian Americans are as well. And they have a right to be. I would be too. And it's spreading throughout the country. More Haitian Americans, not just in Springfield, Ohio, not just in Ohio. A lot of Haitian Americans are afraid because of what Trump is saying about them, and they feel unsafe. They've been here for years. They feel unwanted. And going back to what J.D. Vance said, the suffering of the American people, they are the American people.
Right. It's interesting because I was reading a quote from J.D. Vance where he says, I'm a Scottish-Irish hillbilly at heart. We do not like outsiders or people who are different from us, whether the difference lies in how they look, how they act, or most importantly, how they talk.
J.D. Vance himself is an outsider. He's been an outsider to Ohio for years. I mean, yeah, he might have grew up in Ohio, went to OSU, and had that 20-year track in Ohio, but then the moment or the instant chance he got from Peter Thiel to go to Yale and then go all the way over to California and then work in California for years and then come back over here and then decide, I want to be a senator.
Trump was going to go to Springfield, but then the mayor said no.
Absolutely.
Yeah, the mayor was
not.
like, no. The mayor, he's chosen his words very carefully. He has not said Trump by name. He's not said Vance by name, but the federal politicians in every quote. But he said it would be, quote, an extreme strain on our resources if Trump came to Springfield. I did not think that would go over well for anyone involved.
Didn't he also say that he feels that if either presidential candidate shows up, it's not going to fix anything, it's not going to heal anything?
Yeah.
So he's really, at this point, just been screwed over so much, and,
Like, the city, I think, just has to heal itself by people loving on each other and, the good people being good.
Yeah, that's exactly what, not to go back to the article I wrote, but that's exactly what I wrote at the end. They just need compassion. They have to have compassion toward each other, and they shouldn't let the federal politicians bring them apart. They should come together and be like, the federal politicians are wrong. This is our community. You don't have a say. You don't know what's going on in our community. These claims were false, and just persevere through it together, because it's not going to be easy. It hasn't been easy. Parents are afraid to send their children to school, but it will get better. And hopefully they'll all go this November. They'll all remember how this kind of has warped the past week of their lives and put that into factor when they cast their vote.
For sure. And I think that it's specifically, yes, everyone should show compassion, but it's specifically the white voices in Springfield, Ohio that need to be coming out, because other voices are being drowned out, other voices are scared. And if a conversation is going to start, it's going to have to come from somebody with at least some sort of, it's going to have to come from somebody that's not in the minority population to start that compassion and start that domino effect of love and peace. Because it's not going to come from a politician coming to visit that town. There's no way. From either side, I think it's just going to make it worse.
Yeah, I mean, there might be enough people there to change that county vote collectively for when it comes down to the president, or when it comes down to election day. But also, still, let's not forget what we talked about last week. Springfield, Ohio is in Congressional District 10, which is lumped into Montgomery County and Greene County, cuts the rest of Clark County out. So
even if they did come together, the lines are drawn in a way that's going to make it very hard. So Vance was elected into the U.S. Senate in 2022, which is a big gap from when Walz was elected into Congress in 2006. Do you think that American voters are going to have more trust in somebody that has spent more time in Congress? Or do you think it doesn't really matter?
Well, I think before it mattered. It matters more to, I think, the Democratic Party than it does the Republican Party, clearly. Because, 2016, we had Trump, who came out of nowhere, was never in politics. He was that outsider. He was the voice that so many people wanted because he was never in politics. He was never one of those lying politicians, which changed pretty quickly. But I don't think it matters that much anymore. I think you still have a large group of people who want to see what these policies are, what their ideas are, or at least for the middle ground people who want to see that and want to know what they think and what they're going to do when they're in office by either vice presidential candidate. But
yeah,
I don't think it affects much of anything anymore.
Maybe that doesn't. I agree with you, but I think the military background absolutely could. Some voters that are on the fence could be leaning. Yeah.
I think Walz kind of sweeps more towards the middle ground anyway, just because of he's done a lot of Democratic policies in Minnesota, but then also has some more Republican policies, you would say, that he has implemented throughout Minnesota that has worked out decently well. I mean, yeah, he has those the free lunches for kids in schools and reproductive rights, but he also supports the Second Amendment right, which is a big thing that a lot of people still argue every day.
Yeah.
I think it was really important when Kamala spoke out on the debate and said that her and Tim Walz are both gun owners, because a lot of people have their assumptions, oh, they're going to take our guns away, but she proved that both of them do own their own guns. And another thing, I think that's why Walz, to your point where he reaches both sides, that's why Walz was such a good pick for Kamala, because he is kind of more middle ground, and not compared to Kamala, maybe more middle ground, and he reaches more people across the nation.
I completely agree. On the same token of the Second Amendment, I mean, he's supported the NRA for years. They've even donated to his campaigns before. I think the one thing that he does speak out about is semi-automatic weapons, which, you know, I think a lot of people can fall into an agreement about that. But in terms of like the general Second Amendment right to own a gun or the right to bear arms, he's in support of it. And I agree with you, Ava. I think that was a really, really important point for her to bring up, is that she owns a gun, he owns a gun. They have no intentions of taking anybody's guns away. The only intentions that they might have is putting restrictions on who can have access to those guns, specifically semi-automatic weapons that can kill a lot of people at once.
Yeah, I mean, even for what Harris has talked about, for what Walz has talked about, for what they support gun-wise, and even what Biden has talked about, Obama's talked about, not a single one has really ever been, hey, we're going to come to your house and take your guns. It's never been mentioned on a political or like a presidential political scale, pretty much ever, because we all know that's not going to happen, and I hate the idea that everybody thinks that it is. They might limit access to certain weapons the same way Bush did in the 90s, where he had the assault weapons ban.
I was just going to say that, to your point, might ban certain rifles, and they're not going to take guns away, just put larger restrictions on it. I don't think it's that wild of a thing to do, considering that there's been 46 school shootings in 2024.
Well, Ava, we want to thank you for joining us and bringing all the insight that you brought and all the articles that you've written so far. You're doing great with the amount of articles you've done and what you've done so far. So thank you.
As a first year especially, you're doing awesome. So I'm super excited to see what you write over the course of your career here at OU.
Thank you so much. Thank you for having me on.
And that's a wrap for this episode of Athens Happens. If you're interested in joining the New Political, come see us in the Radio Television Communications Building on Sundays from 7 to 8 p.m. Also, make sure to check out thenewpolitical.com for more podcast episodes and other content. Thank you, and until next time.